So I know what you're saying. You're looking at the thumbnail, you're looking at this title, and you're like, oh, Joe, this is one clickbaity video, just like every other YouTube video about Stadia. And I just gotta say two things to you. First, I gotcha. Secondly, no, I don't mind Stadia being a part of the gaming industry. I actually like the idea of Google stepping in and challenging the status quo of video games. I think it's really exciting. I think the fact that Google's here, you're seeing moves for things like cross-play, cross-saves, you're seeing Microsoft, Nintendo, PlayStation playing well together, all because Google Stadia is coming in on their turf. I'm not just here to bash on Google Stadia to bash on it, but I do have some concerns, especially coming out of E3. Now we know what Google Stadia is, and we have an idea of what these other streaming platforms hold. I do have some reservations about Google Stadia. So what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna talk about the positives, the elevator pitch of Google Stadia, my concerns, and why I think the future is still uncertain for Google Stadia. So with that, let's talk about what Google Stadia actually is. The elevator pitch. What is Google Stadia? Think of it as a gaming ecosystem you can take anywhere, wherever you want at all times. As long as you have internet access, you are no longer required to have a piece of hardware with you to play the games you want. That the power is all in the cloud. That you'll never have to purchase another video game console ever. It sounds bold, but that's what Stadia is. It's a marketplace, it's an ecosystem in the palm of your hands. Think of it like this. You're watching a YouTuber and they're playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You look at that game and you're like, wow, I want to be Cassandra. I want to stab people in the back of the head. I want to play this game. So you click the link and you're automatically sent to the Google Stadia marketplace where you buy that game instantly and then you play it instantly. No loading, no day one patch, nothing. You are playing the game as is, straight from a cloud server. Now you could play this on your Pixel devices or your Chromecast. You could play it on your laptop. It doesn't matter where you play. As long as you have internet access, you could play Google Stadia. Essentially, it's not so much Netflix as it is a Steam without the bloatware or a Epic Game Store that actually has features. And so you might be saying to yourself, well, Joe, this sounds freaking awesome. It's games without limitations, right? How is this bad? How is this not cool? How is the internet not excited? Well, that's where my concerns come in. So let's talk about concern number one, and that is internet inconsistency. If the one thing about the internet is consistent, is that it is consistently inconsistent. Wow, I said that word a lot in the last 30 seconds. But yeah, it's true. The internet here is not a consistent thing. It is not a steady flowing thing that is always at that one speed that you need constantly. It's just not. And we don't care for the most part when it comes to our phones or our tablets. We get that we're not going to get 720p for the most part where we're traveling. Even here in the tri-state area, man, does internet get rough sometimes. But when we're talking about that consistent experience, when we're talking about that quality, that 4K content, well, how are we going to actually achieve it? Now, for me, I live right next to New York City. I have gigabit. And I'm going to tell you right here, right now, here are the speeds you're going to need to run Google Stadia. Most people are going to have a problem running Google Stadia at 4K. And that's a problem where most people are adopting 4K TVs to actually have that internet bandwidth needed in order to play Google Stadia games. That's a problem. Even for me, where I have gigabit, if I am playing a game or if I'm streaming or if I'm just watching Netflix, whatever the case may be, and it's during peak hours, forget about it. Man, things get rough. Netflix loves to artifact, it loves to drop frames, it loves to drop that resolution. So I'm not convinced that Google Stadia is going to give me that constant experience needed. What's going to happen when I'm playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey for 4K surround sound, all the way then dipping suddenly to 720p stereo sound? That's immersion breaking. I mean, even in the Stadia Connect, we saw plenty of streams where people were just dropping resolutions from 4K all the way down to sub 720p. We saw it crash at certain points. It buffered like 3 times for my stream. It was just not the best solution, and it was kind of embarrassing when the stream was having a trouble keeping up when this is all about a streaming platform. It's actually kind of embarrassing. Let's talk about my concern number 2, data consumption. Man, I love my cable provider. said no one ever. When we take a look at the likes of Comcast, Time Warner, Hello Satan, AT&T, they all have something in place called data caps. Now, for me, I'm lucky enough that I don't have to have or worry about a data cap. But I know for millions of people out there, that is a huge problem. People like Time Warner have monopolies in a lot of regions of America, which means they get to set the terms, the limits, and conditions that you can use the internet for. So a lot of these people give you an allowance. Man, Time Warner, you're so gracious giving me an allowance like I'm 5. And what they do is they say, hey, you can only use 1 terabyte of storage of internet. Now, if you want more storage for the internet consumption, then we're going to charge you extra. But if you go over that terabyte and you don't have additional storage, well, guess what's going to happen to you? Your internet provider will throttle your internet speeds down to a crawl, and then they're going to nickel and dime you and charge you overage fees on top of your existing bill if you go over that allotted amount. And see, that's a problem when you're streaming just Netflix entirely or Hulu. Now let's bring gameplay into that, where you're actually talking back to the server and you're talking about 4K content. And I bring 4K up a lot because 4K is becoming the standard, and in the next year or two, it will be the standard in which we view entertainment. It's going to take just 64 hours of gameplay will amount to 1 terabyte of storage. That's a lot. And you might be saying, Joe, I'm not playing 64 hours of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. That's just not happening. I'm lucky if I could get 6 hours of Assassin's Creed Odyssey a week. Well, let's bring that into perspective. Let's just say you only play 5 hours of video games every single week, right? What is that going to amount to? It's going to amount to 20 hours, which is going to make what? Ballparking at the top of my head, around 300 gigabytes of space. That's a lot of space. On top of that, now you have to think about your Netflix, you have to think about your internet consumption when it comes to your internet access, your Wi-Fi, your pornography, everything. You now have to really look under a microscope to make sure you're not going to go over that 1 terabyte of space. That's just a lot of worry in order just to stream Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's just not that worth it to me. So let's talk about worth. Is Stadia even worth it? Because there's something I left out on purpose. I talked about 4K a lot. I talked about the speed you'll need to be able to hit such a feat. And I left out the part that in order to play games at their top quality, at their 4K quality, you will need to pay $9.99 every single month to do that. Now, it's called Stadia Pro, and it's the illusion of value, because with Stadia Pro, you have their Stadia-like Game Pass equivalent. Now, if you guys don't know what Game Pass is, this is what Microsoft has done to stay relevant in this generation, and it's a tremendous service where $10 a month you spend for day one access to all Xbox Studio first-party games, and then you get a backlog of third-party publishers and indie stuff as well. For $10, it's a really great deal. Google Stadia Pro is that, but it also locks behind the content wall of 4K content. Now, to show you how messed up that is, when you take in consideration Steam or even the Epic Games Store, they're not pricing you out if you want to play the latest games at 4K. All you do is pay $60 and you can play whatever game at whatever resolution you want because it's yours now. Stadia locks that behind a paywall because they don't want everyone using the bandwidth on 4K. And what Google wants you to think is, well, it's $9.99 a month. It's not that bad, right? It's cheaper at this point than Netflix. Sure, let me hop on this little bandwagon. I'll get a few games for free. That's cool, right? Take in consideration this. I bought my PlayStation 4 Pro almost 3 years ago, and at full price, $399. Now, by the time the PlayStation 5 comes out, my console would have been 4 years old. So theoretically, it's actually cheaper to buy a PlayStation 4 Pro than it is on Google Stadia. And Stadia is only a little bit cheaper than an Xbox One X. That is just crazy to me. In Stadia, your tech might be fancy, but there is no mascot. There is no killer app. overall, you've come in very sterile with a whole lot of tech jargon and no games to really show other than games we've already played before. I don't need a breakdown of The Division 2. I've already played it. I've played Destiny and owned it on every platform it's been on. I am not getting excited for Shadowkeep. I'm sorry. There's no reason for me to leave my Xbox, to leave that ecosystem, to leave the Master Chief Gears of War Forza behind. There's no reason to leave behind my PlayStation with the slew of games like Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, and Uncharted. There's no reason to jump to your platform because honestly, there's just a whole bunch of third-party games. There's just no roadmap to what games are going to be like on your console that are exclusive to your console. There is literally a year-long gap where we don't know what's coming to your console. Look at Xbox Scarlet. We don't know the hardcore specs of what that console is. We don't know what the shell of the console is going to look like or the controller, but we know for sure that the Master Chief is going to be on Scarlet on day one. We know Halo Infinite is a day one launch game for Scarlet. Why should I be excited for Stadia? There's nothing there. And that's the thing. Is Google actually going to be here for the long haul? Like every expert, every analyst you talk to, they say streaming is going to be very small until the next 5 to 10 years where it really starts taking off. Is Google going to stay around? Like, is it going to be another Google Hangout situation? Is it going to be another Google Plus situation? Is Google actually in this for the long haul? I've yet to see. Because what we've seen so far is a bunch of sterile conferences with the promise of all this awesome tech with no games to really show for it. So that's why I am so pessimistic on the Stadia launch. That's why I do ask the question, is it dead on arrival? Because from what I've seen on the internet, there's really no pulse on this thing as it launches in November. For me, I want it to succeed. I want Google to do well. I want the competition. I want the innovation, but I just don't see Stadia as that tour de force. But I hope I'm wrong. So I want to know what you guys and gals think down below in the comment section down below. Do you think Stadia is going to succeed? Are you a day one purchaser, or are you a skeptic like me? Let me know in the comment section down below, because here at Bad Bit Games, there's no wrong answers. There's just conversations. And if you like rants like these, news, reviews, a podcast called The Trophy Room, then please, please, please hit like, share, subscribe. Helps me out, builds this big, beautiful family that I call home. And so with all that said, and with all that out of the way, everybody keep your wits about you and have a nice one.